Welcome back, everyone. Thank you. Welcome back. So we're going to get going with our second panel discussion, which is focusing on the brands that sponsor marathons and these and marathon events. So I would pleased to be welcoming to the stage Chris Miller, who's the DVP of Global Brand Strategy and Innovation at Abbott. Tanuj Kapilashrami, who's the Chief Strategy and Talent Officer at Standard Chartered. John McIvor, who is the Head of International Marketing at Bank of America. And Abhinav Kumar, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of TCS. So please come to the stage. Wherever you like. So we've heard this morning already about marathons and what it takes and the community around driving the professionalism of marathons forwards. So can you tell us a bit about the journey that your brand has been on in terms of your partnership with marathons? Perhaps, Abhinav, if you could start us off.
Sure. And look, I think that was a phenomenal discussion in the previous panel, and in many ways it represents the spirit of the sport, which is about that healthy competition, but much larger than that, a sense of community in which you collaborate and you work together and you uplift the sport as a whole, right? As the organizations which organize these marathons are doing all of this, I think as sponsors as well, we are very proud of the role which we play in this sport, and I think looking forward to discussing that with some phenomenal companies here which have been supporting the sport for a long time. I guess I'll take Wayne's position, which he took in the last panel, that TCS is the baby in the room here. Standard Chartered has been doing it for a long, I think 27 years or in supporting marathons. Bank of America started supporting Chicago also a very long time ago. Abbott has been there with the Abbott World Marathon Majors. We started our journey in around 2008 or so. We've been roughly 15 years, and we discount some years on the COVID part on this part too, in this sport. And prior to that, look, we used to, as we were building up our brand, we used to have partnerships with various different sports, right? We were into pro cycling, we were into cricket, we had an IPL team. We had a partnership in Formula One with Ferrari and done various different things. But the moment we got into the sport of running, something really, really clicked for us. And we took this strategic call a decade and a half ago that we're going to shut down everything else and go all in on the platform of running. We started back at home, where we are headquartered in Mumbai. Initially, we partnered with Standard Chartered, which we used to be the title partner of that race, and they kindly gave it to us after a few years. Tanuj and I are going to talk about that.
It wasn't a kind move at all.
So with Mumbai, then we quickly went on to our first international race outside of India, which was the TCS Amsterdam Marathon. I think the representatives from Amsterdam are also here, Rene. And New York after that, and over the period of the last decade and a half, we have now 14 different partnerships, right? The latest one with Paris, in which we are a technology partner, we just signed that 3 weeks ago. We have some of our partners from ASO, which runs that here, and congratulations for them for featuring in the top 3 as well. So look, our journey into this has been absolutely phenomenal, but kind of few reasons why we really went all in on this. When compared to many of the other sports, right? Like Formula One, let's take it that. It's a great sport. Our clients used to love the relationship with Ferrari. We used to go to the races, have a nice Michelin star lunch, some wine, go down to see the drivers and the car. We used to take clients to Maranello, which was the center of the Ferrari world, to see the Ferrari museum, test drive a car. You saw 50-year-old men and women become 8-year-old children. It was great. But there's something different about running, that unlike spectating all these sports and enjoying it, you're an athlete in the sport. And therefore, your emotional engagement with it at a different level. When you look at our business, we're in the B2B tech space. It's not a business that our clients get emotional about, right? We are all about doing things well, improving how our clients run their technology, and providing a safe, stable environment in which they can operate. It's not emotional, but on the day of the marathon, I can assure you many of them are super emotional. So it's a great moment for our brand to enable this for them and for them to experience it. Today, of our 14 running platforms, 4,000 of our customers and 8,000 of our colleagues run these races. It's been great. Of course, all those good things. I think Brand Finance's report shows it. The big uplift to our brand from this is fantastic. So same for all the brands represented here today. But much more than that, I think why we stayed on this and we strengthened our support for this is because of the phenomenal force for good that this platform is. Right, marathons are they're a wonderful sport. They do so much good. Right, they take your city to the world and bring the world to your city. Many of the things which are there in Brand Finance's report, it's about, it's improving wellness and health in the community, but raising important funds for charity. It's the economic impact on the cities. I mean, it's phenomenal that these top 50 marathons bring $5.2 billion of additional incremental economic surplus to all the cities which host them. In today's, chaotic global economy, each one of those dollars are very, very welcome by all these cities. And of course, the community work on this, engaging to me, and maybe we can talk about it a little later in the panel, as we talk about the benefits to us and all the things. One of the things which is really important to us is getting different elements of the community, whether it's children, it's teachers, and others really involved with the sport. But for us, it's been a great ride, and it's great to see this event today, in which this community is gathered here today to celebrate the marathons, which have all some of them, whatever be the rankings. I think congratulations to all the top 50 for featuring here, and again, big thanks to Brand Finance for doing this first of its kind research for this sport. It is an underserved sport. We're speaking a bit about broadcast rights and all of this. It gets a lot of attention locally in the cities, and it's as was said in the previous panel, it's the happiest day in the city usually when the marathon is taking place in any city in the world. But it doesn't get the kind of necessarily the global attention that more international competitive sports, football or cricket or whatever gets. I think by research like this, we hope that can also drive more interest into the sport, which is naturally coming from the grassroots, with more and more people taking up running as one of the ways of improving their fitness.
Brilliant. And John, you've probably also had quite a busy week with Boston on Monday, so tell us about
the team has
journey.
certainly had a busy week, and kudos. I know I've talked to some people already that were there, people who actually ran it, and they've been incredibly complimentary. For us, Boston is at a year two of entering into a decade-long relationship with Boston, so we're really thrilled about that and how that started. I mean, our running journey started obviously in Chicago. I'd like to say that we brought the incredible strategic nous of Abhinav and his team deciding to do that, but it's actually we acquired another bank, LaSalle, 17 years ago, that's based in Chicago, and so that's been an incredible journey for us in terms of learning. And it's not just actually the marathon. I think, Donna, you mentioned it. There's a whole flight of running events from, I think, the brilliantly named Shamrock Shuffle, which is held on St. Patrick's Day, all the way up to the marathon. And I think for I'm sure Tanuj will touch on this as well, that for banks in particular, that we have this symbiotic relationship with the communities that we work in. I think the best banks really understand that what is good for communities, what is good for the economies, and we can we've had some of the stats, and I'm sure we'll dive more into that. That's great for us, but if you see anything actually in the last few years that Bank of America has done, any communication ends with what would you like the power to do? And it's about, therefore, thinking about what do communities care about? Why is it that millions of people will come out onto the streets in London? Why is it that in Boston, 30,000 people will come to run and will spend months and months and months of hard work getting to that point? And we'll get into the stories of why that is the case. If things matter that much to people, how can we not engage and get involved? And then it's really upon us. I think that any sponsor, I don't even like that word, but anyone that supports these events, it's imperative on us to say, is $1 from us worth more than $1 from other people? So we have to be incredibly thoughtful and passionate and creative about how we as a community work together to make sure that we have the maximum philanthropic impact, economic impact, social, all of those things. So it's not enough just to pat on the head and a check. And we really throw our entire organization into these events to make them absolutely the best we possibly can.
Perhaps Chris, and then I'll come to you, Tanuj. Chris?
Yeah, thank you. I guess we kind of are the baby of the group. I hadn't realized it, but we're just in our 10th year of sponsoring. So maybe like Wayne, we're the precocious teenager. Yeah. I think it's interesting. So first, thank you, Brand Finance, for putting this together. It's a great report. Also, it's for us as we review a number of our other sponsorships, other categories. It's nice to have this. Congratulations to TCS. Michelle, you and your team are killing it. It's great to see the expansion across the series, how it's all across the world, I should say, and the impact that that's making on the running community, as you spoke to. We're not a bank, we're not a consultancy, so maybe my money that I have to work with is a little bit less, but we're a healthcare company, and it's probably the most important thing that you never think about. When you're healthy, you have 1,000 wishes, 1,000 things that you can do. But when you're sick, you have one wish. You have one focus of what you want out of life. And so for us as a company about that, as our core business, it's about helping people get healthy and stay healthy. And then the marathons, as we started talking to the World Marathon Majors to then become the Abbott World Marathon Majors, the 6, now 7 races, it was a way to really celebrate what health allows you to achieve. And the great thing about marathoning and the sport is it's not a one-day event, right? I mean, as you said, like the city comes alive on that day, but as we heard from Ted earlier, it's 8, 10, 12 weeks or more of training. And when somebody's going through that training, their health is impacted, their community's health is impacted. I like to tell runners that, when you go out for your run, like especially those like rainy days or those hot, humid days, and your neighbors are like maybe peeking out the curtains or hear the footsteps go by, like, oh, there goes that crazy person again out running in that weather. But they start thinking differently about their own health. Now, maybe they're not going to run a marathon, but maybe they'll run a 5K or a 10K or start walking or think differently about their sleep or recovery or nutrition. But that's the kind of like outsized impact that these events really have. My wife ran London 2 years ago, yesterday. So 2 years ago yesterday, because Facebook likes to remind you of all the photos, and she has serious FOMO for not being here this weekend. But like seeing the joy through her face, or my son who's 9 has grown up in this, and kind of an unusual childhood because he calls Eliud Kipchoge a friend, which is itself a story. But like that, the impact that has, like for him, it's just natural to like you go and run, and it's all about sport, and for her, and that's just like the end of one. So I think for us on this now 10-year journey and this fantastic partnership, and Eliud likes to say, talking about a running world, I think that's what's great about like all of us partners. We may come from different areas of business, but our focus and what we're able to drive together and the health of the world is impacted by that.
Brilliant. And finally, Tanuj, could you tell us about the journey that Standard Chartered's been on?
Yeah, so look, thank you first for inviting me, and thank you for this great piece of work, which I agree with everyone. I think it's going to be a critical input into all of our firms and many others as we think about where we take this journey next. So Standard Chartered's been in marathons for 27 years now. We started in Hong Kong with 1,000 runners. Last year, we had 250,000 people who ran one of Standard Chartered marathons. We do 10 of them now, and these are sort of marathons we are the principal sponsors for. So these are and then we have a range of other partnerships, but 10 marathons that we do. There are not a lot of regrets that I have in my time, but losing the Mumbai Marathon to TCS is very high on that list. Not competitive here at all. Now, why do we do marathons? A lot has been said. For us, I think it links very strongly to our strategy and to our brand identity. We are an international cross-border bank, and there is something very powerful with this idea of running in various markets that we have called home, right? We started in Hong Kong. We're an auto-issuing bank in Hong Kong. We run one of our most successful marathons in Hong Kong. And there's something really powerful about this idea of being a cross-border bank, being an international affluent wealth manager, and this idea of internationalism and this idea of running as linking between some of the markets, which are very critical business hubs to us. So very strong linkage to our strategy. And then very strong linkage to our brand identity. A couple of things. It is a very inclusive sport, and we'll talk about it. Everyone's spoken about it. But this idea of inclusion is at the heart of who we are as a business. The idea of progress is at the heart of who we are as a business. And the beauty of marathons is, actually, it's all about progress. I meet people as I travel around our marathons who did the fun run or the family run, then did the leaders run. We've got our leaders, then went on to do 5K, then did 10K, and did then the full marathon over the last few years. So there is a story around progress, competing with yourself, excellence, striving to be better than what you were yesterday. And that idea of progress is at the heart of who we are as a bank. So, really appeals to us in a massive way. And the last piece I will say is innovation. And you made that point, something I firmly believe in. Marathons are not just about the race day. It's about everything that happens before and after. And we did something very interesting in Hong Kong. Hong Kong opened its third runway, so the third airport runway. It was a really big move, signifying the progress of Hong Kong, signifying, the economic prosperity. And we organized a 10K run with the government of with the government of Hong Kong, inviting regulators, policymakers, but some of our oldest clients to run on the third runway. And it was one of the most successful events we ran. I mean,
there were no planes taking off or landing there.
No. Before the first plane took off or landed. So the third runway opened, and we ran this sort of special edition of a stand chart run on the third runway. And the reason I use that as an example, and I'm sure all of us have many such examples to share, that for me, marathons are not just about the race day. It's about everything that goes leading up to it, but actually thinking about racing as an asset, as this really inclusive asset, which you can do much more with with your colleagues and communities within which you operate.
And I think the point about innovation, I think I'd like to pick up on a little bit more, because each of you are working within very sophisticated businesses that have a lot of technological and innovation leadership. So beyond branding, what more does your sponsorship bring to the marathon? Perhaps, Abhinav, to you again?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think they're very different businesses, right? I mean, you have a bank, you have a technology company, healthcare company. A lot of other sponsors of marathons are, apparel companies, energy drinks, cars, right? If you're a consumer good, you have a slightly different strategy, perhaps, because you actually make a lot of sales in and around the marathon. You look at any of, New Balance or Adidas or any of the apparel companies. For them, it's part of their go-to-market in that sense, right? For many others, it's a brand play or a community play or so forth, right? I think there's so many different aspects of value to this which we take in. On relating it to our business, many sporting events also, as they have embraced more and more technology, both inside the sport and in enhancing the spectator experience, it becomes a great testing ground for us to build new capabilities. And we've been doing it for a while, right? If you look at all the marathons which we partner with, many of them represent in the room here today. For most of them, we've been running their kind of central nervous system, which is the mobile app behind the marathon, which has, if you register as a runner, that's what you download. It gives you all your information. And the most important and used feature in it is the track and trace part, which is when you're running, whoever's supporting you, your family and your friends can track and see where you are, look at your predicted finish time, and then be at the finish line to give you a hug. Of course, you're not sweating too much, hopefully, but to give you a hug at the finish line. And then, as we saw in that video with Sydney, maybe go to the pub to celebrate after that. I think it was a journalist in the UK who pointed out another interesting application of the track and trace. They said, couldn't burglars use this to know how much time they have to rob your house before you finish your race, right? I don't think it's been used for that yet. But there are many new things on it. We are speaking about taking the marathon to new audiences. One of the great innovations which we did at the TCS New York City Marathon was actually broadcast the race live through the app, which meant in many of the places of the world where the broadcast wouldn't go to, they were able to take the app and see what's happening. There were many instances of people from regions such as Africa who had their sons, their parents had their sons and daughters running some were elite runners, but they didn't get a channel which would show them this. But they watched the race through the app, and it just brought in new audiences there. We just, as I said, the latest one we've tied up with is with Paris. We have a big innovation center in Paris which specializes on AI. So we're excited about the connection there of seeing how we can use AI to enhance the spectator experience more in the years to come. But AI is also being used to enhance the athlete experience. One of the projects which we have underway, we started about a year and a half ago, is called the Future Athlete Project. We started this with one of the most legendary athletes in the sport, Des Linden in the US, who was the previous winner of the Boston Marathon, the Bank of America Boston Marathon. Yes. So what we did with Des was we mapped out her heart and created the world's first digital twin, which is a digital model of her heart. And every time she goes for a run, it captures something, I think about 27 different parameters related to her heart. And these are not like standard things you would get on one of our great Garmin watches or, okay, no, I'm not a brand ambassador of Garmin, but I like Garmin. So shout out to them. It's not what you get here. It's your heart rate and sleep and all of this stuff. It's really advanced stuff. It's your blood flow, it's tissue movement, it's stress on the heart, all of those things. And it gives insights to her. And we've added a lot more athletes in this program from all around the world on how do they pace their run better, how do they get more, how do they get faster, or are they stressing themselves out in one particular part of the race and they should slow down somewhere to speed up later, and all of those things. And those insights are great because we are standing in this sport on the cusp of a major human achievement, notwithstanding what Hugh was talking about, those 4 seconds to run a mile inside a Concorde. But it's in, it's going to be in our surely in our generation. It could even be on Sunday that the 2-hour marathon landmark is going to be broken. There is going to be a human who's going to run it under 2 hours. It's been done in perfect conditions. It's not yet been done in a real marathon, but it's getting there. So if tools like this can help the runners get even seconds off their time, let's say a minute off their time, this is what is going to help us take human achievement to a new level. The other thing about this technology is while it's all tested here, it has great applications after this, right? Look, there's a lot of technology which is if you take NASA, for example, or any of the space programs, there are many things which get invented for astronauts, which then become useful for the rest of us. One of the notable inventions is the ballpoint pen. The ballpoint pen was invented so that astronauts in space don't have their ink pens leak ink, right, which becomes a blue blot floating around in space. But it's now one of the most used products all across the planet. Similarly here, our hope with this digital heart project is that as we advance this, at some stage it can become commercialized and it can become democratized so that everyone on the planet can have an access to a digital twin of their heart or any other, for that matter, any other organ of the human body, which can help save lives because it can give you early detection of issues, tell you when your heart is under stress, should you go and take a test or should you change your habit, should you be sleeping more, all of those things. And what better role for technology than be in the business of saving lives? It's kind of like what Abbott does as well. So we really like to use these marathons also as a test bed on the technical space.
And Chris, do you have anything to add there in terms of, I suppose there's a two-way relationship between what you bring to the marathon series and perhaps what Abbott
absolutely.
learns.
So I think, the thing about the marathon is if you want to be inspired, like go to a marathon. Like everyone here, I'm sure, has seen the movie that always likes to run at Christmas time, and Hugh Grant talks about the beginning. If you're feeling down, go stand at the arrivals lounge of Heathrow. I think if you want to be inspired, stand at the finish line of the marathon, and not for those 2-hour runners, but those 5, 6, 7-hour runners. But if you want to change your life, run a marathon. Like as we heard earlier from the race directors, that's when you accomplish that, you can accomplish anything in life. And so for us, it's a two-way learning. So there's things like Lingo, our bio-wearable, that you'll see Elliot and the NN running athletes on Sunday will be wearing it. It's a little disc on the back of their arm, about the size of a pound coin. It's originally from Freestyle Libre technology for people with diabetes, but it's tracking their glucose. That we started developing this, and It'd be a time we don't want to remember, but the London Marathon at one time, a few years ago during COVID, was elite only. It was loops around the park. Elliot had an uncharacteristically bad day. And they came to us and said, hey, we've been talking about, learning about what's happening inside his body. This did not go well. Could we work together? And from that really came some great insights of his own fueling. He then got even faster and set a couple of world records. We got learnings from it in terms of how can we apply that technology to then come out with lingo and for our general runners, which is available here in the UK. We have nutritional products that, more from a US standpoint, that help the runners, again, from there, whether it's their protein or hydration. So we help them learn, and also we learn from them. We just launched on Monday in Boston, or actually over the weekend during the Boston Marathon, Team Abbott. And that comes out of, we know there's a lot of health stories. And every marathon, it's like, let's tell these stories. I'm like, great, where are the stories? And like, there's no stories. But then we start hearing about them day of the race, like, it's too late. So we're doing this call for entries, if you will, for people to join Team Abbott who have these great health stories that then we can showcase, tell their story, put them on the stage during the marathon. We're founded in 1888, so we have over 135 years of health experience. We can apply that to them. And I know that along the way, we're going to be learning a lot from that too, right? Because every runner is different, every person is different. And so as we learn about what impacts them, what changes do they make, what things are they looking for, we can start to apply that to our products, our services, and our R&D.
And John, earlier building on that, you were talking about sort of the charitable aspect that the bank can help support.
Yeah, I can't compete with digital, heart creation.
You have all the money.
But we can, well, now you mention it. Bankers and hearts don't often get put in the same sentence. So, maybe we can try that. But if we take Boston as the most sort of, recent example, one of our learnings from year one was that we've gone all in now, really, in trying to help the runners with their with all of their fundraising, and putting at their disposal the entire Bank of America network. So that's everything. So that's all our advertising. You can see videos of them on our ATMs. You go into branches. We project them onto the tallest buildings around Boston. I think we had adverts on over 90 radio stations, TV, YouTube, and so on. So I think we can probably show just a short one, so you can see what I'm talking about.
The second video.
When training feels hard and I don't think I can make it, I remember that although my cancer is still here, so am I. It's been 8 years since I was first diagnosed. And thanks to breakthrough treatment at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, I'm embracing each day with hope. Help give more people like me a chance to thrive even with cancer. Want to donate? Give to my cause.
These were all over Boston. I saw them running all this past weekend.
And you can go to YouTube now and you can see there's a whole stack of them, and so for everyone that's just so powerful. It's not about us.
Tanuj, anything to add?
Can I just go back to the point around innovation? And there's such great ideas, but my suggestion would be, listening to you guys really is, how do we use via the work Brand Finance is doing to actually do a spotlight on some of this innovation more? So for us, as a bank, there is huge amount of data we get from the marathons, which influences our product design, also influences new ventures we want to get into. So one of the ventures we funded in Singapore was a fintech, which was health, wealth, and lifestyle coming together. And a lot of the research on that was based on Singapore Marathon. So, you kind of think of it as a funky race and the T-shirts and the emotional. But actually, we became very clear that we wanted to get more young people getting comfortable on coming into the wealth affluent. And they were scared to go to traditional banks for wealth management. They were boring, too complicated. And we did this fintech, and the fintech's evolved. I sit on the board of the fintech. It's called Audax, and actually it's been a really sort of disruptive idea. That's one. We are doing a really interesting partnership with Whoop, and our insurance company is now piloting that in one of the marathons. But actually, based on the pilot, we want to take that as a proposition we take to our affluent customers to basically say, it's a partnership with Whoop. but actually impacts the premiums that you pay on your health insurance. And that becomes really about a sustainable lifestyle and how that really helps you with your well-being, financial, physical, and of course, sort of mental. So I think there's massive space around innovation. And I've heard some stuff today which I should have known, which I didn't know, and I think the more we can do to showcase that is important. Look, the community angle for us is massive, and the third one, which obviously I'm the most passionate about, and hopefully we'll talk about, is the employee angle, right? We do, if I look at the last 27 years, the biggest contribution to our Future Makers, which is our flagship community impact. It's about youth employment, bridging the gap between education and employability. That's the big charity that we support. And the biggest contribution to Future Makers and to our SC Foundation has been the fundraising that has happened via marathon. So it's always been the biggest contributor. We obviously do stuff where we give sponsorship to individuals. But to me, actually, it's the ecosystem play on the day of the marathon, around the marathon, where we have our charity partners running with the donors, where we actually run a special race for our Future Makers program, where we get beneficiaries. So, youth who are involved with Future Makers to do a special race. So it's on the day. Taking this role of a bank is not just borrowing and lending. Bank is actually an ecosystem. And what we do as a bank is bring that ecosystem together to drive the prosperity of individuals, but of economies, of nation states. And in some ways, the on-the-day innovation around those, playing out that ecosystem play for me is massively important. And I think the social piece of it and the community piece of it is really big. Now, I don't know whether you're going to ask about employees, but if you won't, I would do the plug. I mean, for me, what it does, and I started with inclusion and I will sort of end with inclusion, what it does to drive that idea of inclusion, not just in the communities within which you operate, but within the organization, is massive. And for me, some of the biggest innovation I've seen in my sort of 7 years with Stan Chart and the last 2 years that I oversee this more directly, is the kind of innovation that has happened internally. So our chief data officer, who heads all of the AI strategy for the bank, at the peak of COVID, started a virtual movement saying we're going to do a race to the moon. So, all of us, our 100,000 employees locked up in the house, built an app on the system. Every kilometer you do adds up, and collectively, by the time COVID finishes, Stan Chart would have done a race to the moon, which is 384,400 kilometers. And I tell you, at that moment, it became a real rallying cry, because people were clocking their hours, people were posting the videos. It was an citizen-led initiative, which was one of the most powerful employee engagement initiatives that I have seen in my time in the bank. And let me tell you, we spend huge amount of money on employee engagement more generally. The same team now is doing a polar expedition. So they are clocking up hours, which is North Pole to South Pole, and the teams are coming together, collaborating. So, this is one of the many examples, but I think there is really powerful way of getting communities together in the most non-hierarchical fashion. Our sports does that more generally, but I think there is something really powerful, non-hierarchical leveler where in racing as a sport, which we've seen play out from an employee engagement perspective massively. Sorry if that wasn't a question.
No, it was a future question, so that's
I would
great.
be doing disservice to my role on this panel otherwise.
There are a lot of journalists in the room, they don't want to interview you. But you reached the moon. I think the next mission should be to Mars.
Okay.
And you're welcome to take Elon Musk as your brand ambassador.
I think thinking both about those internal audiences, but also external audiences, I think a potential misconception that someone might have when they're thinking about how they spend their sponsorship budget is, why would I pick a marathon when it's one day of the year? Versus other things that you might sponsor which are ongoing and perhaps have more traction. So what's your take on that, and how do you go about activating the sponsorship on the other 364 days of the year? Abhinav?
Look, I think that's not the right way to kind of look at it, right? If you look at different sports, See, one of the sports which gets the highest level of sponsorships, okay, the Olympics. Companies which are top sponsor of the Olympics spend a minimum of 50 million a year, all the way up to Coca-Cola, which spends billions on it. And it happens once in 4 years. Forget once a year, right? As I think we've been kind of discussing, it's not just about the race day, it's about engaging the whole community across the year. And if you look at it in that way, I think marathons are phenomenal sports where you can have a lot of impact in the community and have a lot of value for your brand and the stakeholders you're interested in at relatively a much better value than many other sports which are extremely expensive to activate. It is a sport which I think can do with a lot more funding as well. There, of course, in this panel you have some long-term supporters of this. I think if there are more companies which join this, it'll be great because marathons themselves are growing. Brand Finance's report says there are 800 major marathons across the world, but the participation in these has been doubling every 5 or 6 years. This sport is exploding and it needs more resources. It also does so much good. I mean, just in a sense, segueing a bit to a topic I do want to make sure we don't miss out discussing here, is one of the big impacts that this sport needs to make. The previous panel spoke about the fact that the demographic which is growing the fastest is the 18 to 29-year-old, which is really great. But there is a demographic below which where we have a big societal problem, which is our children, those below 18. If you look at the figures on childhood obesity and being overweight, they're getting worse and worse. I'll share a few stats with you. In Europe, the childhood obesity and overweight rate is something like 20%. Right here in in UK, it's, I keep forgetting about Brexit. So right here in the UK, it's 26%. Okay, and of course, top of the food chain in the US, childhood obesity and being overweight is 35%. So more than a third of our kids are beyond the weight that they should be. So many of them, by far. It's very different. I think there are many of us in the room, and I don't want to give my age, who grew up in the 70s and 80s. At that point of time, even in the US, the obesity rate used to be about 5% amongst children. It's now 20%, right? It's gone fourfold. So our children are growing up a lot unhealthier than we all did. I think marathons have a huge role to play here, and many are doing so. You heard Hughes Bracher speak about the TCS London Mini Marathon quite proudly, in which on this Saturday, 17,000 kids from all over the UK are going to come to London and they run. And to me, if I look across all the marathons and all the images and the videos we have of it, there's this one picture which has always stayed with me. I don't know if they have it somewhere there and they can show it to you as we speak. But to me that, so you have kids from 6 years old all the way up to 16 who take part. They run 1 mile or 2 miles. They, in running, they get this medal standing right outside Buckingham Palace. Many have come from smaller cities across the UK. It's such a proud moment. Then they go back home. On Monday morning in the assembly in the schools, they recognize that these people ran the TCS London Mini Marathon. And not only that, for each of the finishers here, they raise funds for their school, which is going to bring sporting equipment or fund a program in the school and all of this. It's a moment of great pride. But that's all great, but that's still not it. To me, and we didn't identify, I don't know the kid's name, but I just love this picture, right? Him running with his teddy bear. To me, the big thing this sports can do is that him having this experience that day, if it helps him make up his mind saying, oh, this is great, I'm going to keep running, I'm going to keep staying healthy, then we can raise a generation of healthier children. And I think that's a phenomenal thing that this sport can do. London's doing that, but so are so many others. I think the New York Roadrunners has a fantastic program, also in partnership with New Balance, in which they bring shoes to economically disadvantaged families. So the kids get their first running shoes, really nice, fancy ones, and that excites them and gets them into running and into staying fit. So many more programs. Many of these do it. We are definitely as a partner talking with many of our the marathons we partner with. But I think this is one place where it'll be great to see us focus a little bit more on as well.
Mm. And I think thinking about that sort of inspiring the next future generation and also going back to Hugh and Ted's gentle competition for the biggest number of runners, it does feel like there's record numbers of participants each year. And does that mean we're sort of in the nadir of marathon running? How do we continue growing the popularity of the sport beyond this? Or do you anticipate that maybe it's an idea now and it will fade away? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll just jump in. I think from working, with people much smarter than me in this sport, with Donna and the 7 race directors, because they bring a great global view as well, because with the 7 races around the world. So, I think that we're not at peak yet. There's still growth. I know Hugh Brasher's got ideas for what he wants. He talked about the lottery opening on Friday. My guess is was it 846,000 or something like that last year. I'm guessing he probably wants to be north of 1 million this year. Don't tell him I said that. But so I think there's still the growth. But then you also, like you mentioned earlier, high rocks, other endurance events. Just in general, there's this growth in sport, and the idea of like, how do you make these races bigger? How do you work with the police forces and local government to keep the roads open longer? Because you've got some people in Boston. Well, it's an elite race, but you have people coming in raising hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for charity, and maybe they're running slower. So how do you keep that open? So like this year, Boston had a hard cutoff at 5:30 p.m. So it was much clearer as to when you were an official finisher of that race. Again, trying to extend that out longer. So I think all the races themselves are looking at how they can continue to make it more inclusive from just more people being able to participate in that. That's what we're seeing.
I mean, the only thing I will say is a lot of conversation that we've had about the big marathons have been in the West, rightly so. A lot of big marathons started in the West. Some of the markets that I represent here are, markets that we are in. I think there is remarkable things that are going to happen over the next decade. I was in the Middle East whole of last week, traveling between markets. The amount of locals I met who are getting into running, the various versions of Dubai Marathon. I've lived in that region for a few years. So I think I'm with you. I think there is a huge amount of innovation that's happening around the more established marathons. But then there are loads of smaller marathons that are going to become bigger and bigger. And we are going to see, we did a Hanoi marathon for the first time in Vietnam, and we were overwhelmed by the reaction and that we saw in that market on the marathon. So I think this conversation will mature and grow.
It's more about the growth of running that
Yeah,
you're
great.
seeing in fitness, right? So 20 years ago at Nariman Point, you'd never see anybody out running.
Yeah.
And in the last 10 years, it's like it's chock-a-block with people out running, or the other countries you were mentioning. In China, like the Beijing Olympics was this huge renaissance of then people going out to run. COVID created this time where we couldn't maybe be together, but you could be outside and go run. And so that's why you've seen this jump even more.
And sorry, we are running out of time, but perhaps we could do 2 audience questions. So if there is a question in the audience. David? Yeah. Down front.
In England, there used to be a chocolate bar called the Marathon, which was sold between 1967 and 1990 when Mars got rid of it. I don't know whether you saw, but in September last year, they relaunched it in the UK. Is this a good thing?
I'll take it. Look, I think Mars has this, I remember going into the stores, I think it was 2 years ago, they launched this product. It's called Mars Protein, right? I think it's a good thing because if you look at it, there is a lot more focus, apart from taking up physical activity and running and looking to be healthier, there's a lot more focus on nutrition which we see coming on inside society, right? Which then puts pressure on products which are naturally not that healthy to look at how they can improve their current product but offer a new range of healthier products as well. I think Mars has a challenge given its probably brand association with what it is to suddenly become a health product, but I'm sure they're really thinking about it. Every company, I mean the beverage companies are definitely have already made that shift for sure. I think as people are going to eat healthier, be more conscious of their food choices and what they put in their bodies, we'll see a lot more of this, and I think that positive pressure is good. If a chocolate company feels compelled to offer healthier alternatives, we were talking about that kids part, right? I bought my, in fact, I did this weekend, so it's really fresh for my 2 teenage boys. They love Nutella, which, as you know, is a phenomenally addictive product. So I bought them this jar of, it's not Nutella, it's some Italian company which has made protein chocolate, whatever, the same, it looks the same, right? And they tried it, it's not healthy, of course, but it's healthier than that. It's got 20% protein in it. So I said, try it, and they ate it, and they're like, yeah, it's not exactly the same, but it's not bad. And I'm like, okay, at least if they're going to eat this, they're slightly healthier than before. And maybe it's about, as you're saying, it's a progress. You get better and better and better, and ultimately maybe they'll be eating their greens and broccoli. Who knows?
Are there any other questions from the audience? Yeah, gentleman in the middle, please.
Hi, Simon from Think Beyond. I really enjoyed hearing about obviously the attractiveness of sponsoring marathon. It's, as you said, it's a social impact company now. I'm kind of interested in whether you see the incredible social impact translate into kind of business results for yourselves, and whether it makes it commercially more attractive for you if you have a set sponsorship figure and you're looking at 2 outfits to sponsor. Can you track the actual impact on your organisations versus sponsoring something that maybe doesn't have such a big social impact?
So, I mean, we have seen very clear stats. So for us, and I know there was this question on this earlier, so beyond the obvious brand awareness scores, which obviously surge up every time there is a marathon that happens in the market, we have been able to see direct correlation into customer acquisition, new additional accounts being opened, further uptick in our websites, which are customer websites in terms of information. So for us, it's we've been able to track the brand consideration, brand awareness, actually getting into new customer acquisition in the markets. What is tougher to track is, when you have those iconic properties. I'm sure Abhinav will have views in Mumbai or New York or sort of Boston, etc. How much value do you put in the fact that in Hong Kong the marathon is called Standard Chartered Marathon? It's called a standard. How much of a value do you put in terms of the relationship you develop with policymakers, stakeholders, government officials, big corporate customers? It's difficult to put a value on that. But from a customer acquisition perspective, every marathon we run, we are able to report on metrics which result directly in direct customer acquisition for us.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, but thank you very much to another wonderful panel. Now, I'll be handing over to my colleague Hugo to take us through the next phase. Thank you.